UFC Jacksonville betting and DraftKings show. We have 14 fights this weekend. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. We're going to get things started in the middleweight division as Cody Brundage comes in as a -190 favorite with the comeback on Cedric Dumas at +160. And this is a matchup where I think we want to target some violence in this spot. I expect the winner to score well on DraftKings because I have to project this fight to end inside the distance as most people would. On one hand, we have Cody Brundage, who is all action right from the very beginning. He's got a collegiate wrestling background. He will jump on a choke if it presents itself. He's also very explosive on the feet. His striking's not the greatest, but he does carry some power, and he is going to go for it in that first round. Now, what's concerning with him is I don't really trust the durability, and I certainly don't trust the cardio. So he's not really a guy that I like to back in the -200 range. I think early prices on him were probably good. But then on the flip side, I think the value is probably on Dumas where it's lined currently because, yes, he's coming off the debut loss against Josh Fremd. I was huge on Josh Fremd, as were a lot of my buddies in that one as well. It was a big win, a big community win for MMA Twitter, but it was just easy to see in that fight. There was clear value on Fremd as a big underdog with a big grappling edge. Dumas entirely unproven, but now we're kind of getting the reverse. You know, Dumas is a sizable dog, and he's still a powerful striker. He still has the tools that made all those people excited to back him as a favorite against Josh Fremd, and now you're getting a much better price tag against an opponent that's less durable and has less cardio. So I think it's not the worst spot for a potential bounce back for Dumas, especially fighting in front of his home state in Florida. So like I said, I mean, I totally get why people would want to go back there as the dog shot. I prefer the early prices on Brundage, but I think in terms of DraftKings, you're going to want exposure to both sides. It's a high variance fight, and I think the winner scores well. But we're going Cody Brundage by submission. That's the official pick. Next fight up in the flyweight division, we have Tatsuro Taira, a -240 favorite with the comeback on Clayton Rodriguez at +280. And this is a matchup of two young prospects. Rodriguez previously fought on Dana White's Contender Series. Tatsuro Taira fighting out of Japan. He's got a 13-0 undefeated record, 7 wins by submission, and that is his best skill set, is his submission grappling. He averages over 2.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, so we know he has solid enough wrestling to get it to the ground, and once it's there, he's got good control. He's got a very slick back take that he'll look for repeatedly, and once he's on your back, I mean, most of the time it's night-night. On the flip side, Rodriguez is a powerful striker. He is going to be giving up a little bit of reach and length to Tatsuro Taira, but Taira is hittable on defense in terms of the striking exchanges. So Rodriguez could potentially land something big on the feet. I think he's going to have to, because if not, then I think he's going to end up on his back here or getting his back taken. And I think that's the biggest edge in this fight, is the grappling in favor of Tatsuro Taira. I think that's the difference. We're going Taira by submission. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Jamall Emmers, a -175 favorite with the comeback on Jack Jenkins at +150. And this is a matchup where I definitely favor the Emmers side. And even though Emmers has historically been a pretty untrustworthy fighter in terms of the fight IQ, the durability is not rock solid either. So those things are concerning, especially as a sizable favorite. But skill for skill, I think he is the much better fighter here. I think he's a better striker. I think he's a better wrestler as well. And then on the Jack Jenkins side, Jenkins is a great athlete, but I'm not sure yet that he's a very good fighter. And what I mean by that is he's got a lot of, you know, intangibles in his favor. You know, good cardio, never going to give up, powerful leg kicks, powerful striking when he lets his hands go. But I think his technique is lacking a bit at this level. He's very hittable in striking exchanges. I think his best weapon is no doubt his devastating leg kicks. And if he's unable to hurt Emmers with those leg kicks, I'm just not sure where he's really, you know, separating in terms of winning minutes here, because I think Emmers is the better striker. I expect Emmers to be landing more at distance, and I actually think Emmers is the better wrestler as well. I don't even really think it's up for debate. Emmers wrestled at the collegiate level. Jack Jenkins, former rugby player, again, just using that athleticism to out-wrestle guys that didn't really have much grappling on the regional scene. I don't think that's going to translate to the UFC level, certainly not in this matchup. So it's just a fight where, outside of the durability, the fight IQ concerns on the Emmers side, I do think he is the much more proven fighter. Skill for skill, I think he's the better round winner, and I think he gets his hand raised here. So we're going Jamall Emmers by decision. That's the official pick. And next up, we have the return of everybody's new favorite fighter, Trevor Peek, comes in to face Jose Mariscal. This fight is currently lined as a pick'em. We've seen the Mariscal side take a decent amount of money here. Now it's down to a pick'em. I still like the Trevor Peek side. I think on one hand, we have Peek, who we know is very powerful, right? All 8 of his wins have come by knockout. 6 of them have come inside the first round. He previously fought on Dana White's Contender Series, and in that Contender Series breakdown, I talked about how, in terms of the technicality, he still needs a lot of improvement, but what he has is fight-changing power, that big power. And we saw in his UFC debut against Eric Gonzalez that he is going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you, even in unconventional ways, like that tomahawk punch that he landed against Eric Gonzalez. That's why he's exciting. That's why he's everybody's new favorite fighter. But he's also got some holes in his game as well. You know, the cardio, the defensive grappling, I think those 2 things are entirely unproven. I'm not sure if Mariscal's the guy that's going to be able to take advantage there. Jose Mariscal is basically a 30-year-old regional grinder. He's fought the who's who on the regional scene over in LFA, a couple other promotions as well. He's got wins over Yusuf Zalil and Pat Sabatini. He's lost to a couple other current UFC fighters as well. He's just a well-rounded fighter. I don't think he's great in any one area, but he's just kind of solid wherever the fight goes. He trains at Elevation Fight Team, so we know he's at a good camp as well. I'm just not sure that a UFC debut against a guy like Trevor Peek, who we know has big power, is going to be the spot to target Mariscal, because over the course of his career, he's not been the most durable guy. He's been knocked out 3 times in his career. I'm just not sure that this is the spot for him. I think Trevor Peek is liable to land something big early and test the chin of Mariscal, and I think he eventually puts him out. So we're going Trevor Peek by knockout. That's the official pick. Next fight up in the flyweight division, we have Zhalgas Zhumagulov, a -195 favorite, with the comeback on UFC newcomer Joshua Van at +165. And I do like the Zhalgas Zhumagulov side in this matchup. I like targeting him to finish or potentially just bet the under 2.5. I think you're getting good numbers on both of those, because most of Zhalgas fights tend to go to decision, and not just any decision, close split type decisions that everybody argues about, where some people think he won, some people think he lost, but ultimately most of the time the judges think he is losing these fights and losing these rounds. And a big part of that is because he's just a guy that doesn't really know how to separate. He's someone who, I've said in the past, he fights on thin margins, and what I mean by that is he's not going to blow anybody away. Even if you think he's clearly winning the fight, it's usually like a 60-40 style of winning, as opposed to like completely blowing the guy out of the water. But he has been more aggressive in some of his recent fights as well, and he's facing somebody who on short notice is making his UFC debut, Joshua Van. He's 7-1 fighter, fighting out of Texas. He's a training partner of Rafael Alves. 5 of his 7 wins have come by knockout, but he's never fought into the 3rd round, and he hasn't fought basically anybody worth anything on the regional scene. So even though he's the flyweight champ over in Fury, he just really hasn't been tested, and certainly hasn't been tested at this level. I think Zhumagulov is basically more skilled than this kid at this stage in his career, wherever the fight goes. I think it basically comes down to the game plan of Zhumagulov here, because if he wants the takedowns, I think he can get them fairly easily. We've seen Joshua Van taken down multiple times on the regional scene. I don't think he has good takedown defense. Sometimes he'll pop back to his feet, but I think Zhalgas will be able to control him on the mat, up against the fence. I also think Zhalgas is live to land that big overhand right that he looks for repeatedly in a lot of his fights. Van's pretty hittable defensively on the feet. We've seen him kind of rocked in the past as well. So I think Zhalgas has multiple ways to win here. I think he's the better fighter. And like I said, I think we're getting a discount on some of his finish props just because we haven't seen him finish anybody outside of Jerome Rivera, who's a bottom of the barrel guy. But who's to say that Joshua Van at this stage, at 21 years old, only being professional for about 18 months, isn't pretty bottom of the barrel in terms of UFC caliber as well either. So I like Zhalgas Zhumagulov, kind of a hot take because I do think he probably gets the finish here. We're going Zhumagulov by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Tabitha Baby Shark Ricci going up against Jillian Robertson. This was my first bet of the week. No surprise to you guys. I backed Tabitha Ricci on the money line at -122 to win 2 units, and I think that's a very favorable price tag. I think there's even some meat left on the bone here at current prices, because the way these two match up, you know, Tabitha Ricci's coming off what I thought was a career best performance against Jessica Penne, where she completely neutralized anything coming back towards her from Penne. Now, Jillian Robertson is much more dangerous than Jessica Penne, but I think At times, we've seen Jillian really struggle in terms of the physicality. She is going to be slightly bigger, but I'm not sure she's going to be the more physical fighter of the two. And when you're able to neutralize the wrestling of Jillian Robertson, she basically has nothing to fall back on. We know her striking. She's not going to present many problems there. I definitely think Tabatha Ricci's a much better striker. I think she's a much better boxer, and I think she'll be landing the bigger shots on the feet. I also favor her significantly to be the one spending time in top position. She averages nearly 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. She's landed multiple takedowns in all of her UFC fights, and we've seen it time and time again. She's very good on top, not just controlling the fight, but staying safe. She fought Polyana Viana, who has a pretty dangerous guard. She fought Jessica Penne, who's not the most dangerous submission grappler, but she is a black belt, and she's not a bad grappler. And Jillian Robertson is much more dangerous than those two, but I'd be surprised if she's able to land takedowns in this fight. I'd be surprised if she's winning the striking in this fight, which basically means she's kind of drawing thin to reversals after being taken down. And it doesn't mean that she can't do that. She's a very capable submission grappler. She's very dangerous, even on bottom, and she could reverse Tabatha Ricci, maybe spend some time in top, where she's much more dangerous in terms of looking to finish the fight from that position. But man, I have a hard time backing her at this number if I think she has to basically get multiple reversals, or at least get one reversal and then finish the fight from there. She's facing somebody who's a better striker, probably better cardio in my book, better wrestling, and probably just as good at jiu-jitsu, especially considering Ricci's going to be the one in top position, and I think she can stay safe there. So we're going Tabatha Ricci by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Mateusz Rebecki, a -150 favorite with the comeback on Loic Radzhabov at +130. And this is a matchup where I do like the Rebecki side. He previously fought on Dana White's Contender Series last season. He was one of the better prospects on the show coming off that season. And I think in his UFC debut, he dominated Nick Fiore, which I know a lot of people expected him to get the finish there, so did I, but he still looked very good in that fight. He definitely was searching for the finish early, and I think he gassed out a little bit chasing that finish. I'm not going to hold it against him here. I do think he's the better fighter in this matchup against Loic Radzhabov, who actually looked pretty good in his debut against Rybovics, landed a ton of takedowns, 11 takedowns in that fight, shot over 20. You know, yes, he gassed out in that fight, but man, you're shooting that many takedowns. Ask Aljamain Sterling, you are going to tire out unless your name's Merab Dvalishvili. So I think Loic Radzhabov doesn't have the best cardio. I think Rebecki's cardio is better. I think Rebecki's more physical. I think Rebecki's a better wrestler. I think Rebecki's a better grappler. And I actually think Rebecki's a better striker as well. He's not the most technical guy, but he's going to move forward and swing those big overhands. He's got a big left hand, powerful hook as well. And once he gets inside, he can land those big bombs or drop in on a double leg and take it to the ground, where he does some of his best work. So I like Rebecki to get it done inside the distance here. I do think you're getting a decent price on the under, and I like Rebecki to find a finish on the mat, whether it's a submission or a ground and pound TKO. He gets it done inside the distance and gets his hand raised. We're going Rebecki this weekend. Next fight up, we have Randy Brown, a -245 favorite with Wellington Turman on the comeback at +205. And this one that I don't have a ton of interest in terms of DraftKings, because I do think Randy Brown probably wins. I just have a hard time seeing him pay off his DraftKings salary. Randy Brown is a guy who is going to keep a solid pace on the feet. He's a good striker. He's going to be working with a 6-inch reach advantage in this matchup, and he's a decent grappler as well. He's just never really going to look to land takedowns of his own. On the flip side, Wellington Turman holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He is going to look to mix in the wrestling, and on the feet, he comes from a Muay Thai striking background. The one main concern with Turman is the durability, because we've seen him knocked out multiple times. He's been hurt on countless occasions. And in terms of the grappling, even though he's a black belt, I'm not sure that he's going to have much of a grappling advantage in this fight. And I don't think he's going to be able to match the pace of Brown. I think Brown's a much better striker as well. So I think this is actually going to be Brown winning a decision here. And even though both guys kind of have durability concerns, I still favor the durability of Randy Brown here. So I do side with him in this matchup, but I'll likely have more exposure to the underdog in Turman on DraftKings just due to the price. So we're going Randy Brown by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up in the welterweight division, we have Neil Magny, a -165 favorite with the comeback on Phil Rowe at +140. And this is a matchup where I think it's pretty likely here we see Neil Magny give Phil Rowe the big brother vet lesson here, because I think he is going to have multiple advantages. For starters, Neil Magny's a guy who's just a very well-rounded fighter. It seems like he's been a top 15-ish guy for as long as I can remember, and he's very talented. Even at 36 years old, he's on the back end of his career, but he is still a very tough test, especially for these up-and-coming guys like Phil Rowe, because he's a guy who's very long and rangy. He can fight behind his jab, and he can really control the grappling in terms of the cage control. He's very strong in the clinch, and he can mix in the takedowns. He averages over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he's a very strong grappler, and I do think he is going to have that advantage in this fight against Phil Rowe, who's known as more of a finisher. All 10 of his career wins have come inside the distance. The main concern with Phil Rowe is that he is going to give up the takedowns. He defends takedowns at less than 50%, and even though he's a capable submission grappler, I don't know if I can back a guy who gives up takedowns so easily, and you're fighting against a guy who's known to land takedowns and be a pretty strong control grappler. So I just think Neil Magny is going to be able to bully him in the clinch and just give him a big brother lesson here. And I think Magny probably gets it done. Obviously, the finishing upside, I think, is more so on the Phil Rowe side, but I think ultimately this one hits the judges' scorecards and we see Neil Magny get his hand raised. We're going Magny by decision. That's the official pick. Next up in the middleweight division, we have Brendan All-In Allen, a -180 favorite with the comeback on Bruno Silva at +155. And this is a matchup where I do like my boy Brendan Allen in this matchup. It's kind of similar to the Ricci Robertson fight in a sense, in that on one side, I think we have a clear minute winner, and that's Brendan Allen, as it was with Tabitha Ricci. Now, Silva is explosive, as is Robertson, but I'm always going to side with the fighter who I expect to be winning the overwhelming majority amount of minutes here. And in this fight, I think Allen's probably got just as much finishing upside as Silva does. Silva obviously coming off the knockout over Brad Tavares. 20 of his 23 wins have come by knockout, but historically, we worry about the cardio and the durability because he fades in fights and he typically gets himself finished. He's been submitted 6 times in his career despite being a black belt, and most of that is because of the gas tank. Once he fades, you can definitely take advantage of this guy, and Brendan Allen is a dangerous submission grappler when he gets the fight to the mat. He doesn't have the best wrestling, but he always seems to manage to get the fight to the ground in a lot of his fights, and I think he's the better striker here as well. So I think he's got multiple ways to win, and I think he finds a finish here. This is a great fight to target on DraftKings. I'm going to favor the Allen side. I expect him to get it done inside the distance. We're going Brendan Allen by submission. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Gabriel Santos, a -235 favorite. The comeback on David Onama at +195. This is a fun matchup. We have Gabriel Santos, who's coming off a UFC debut on short notice against Leron Murphy. A lot of people thought he won that fight. He ended up losing a split decision on the judges' scorecards, but it was a very good account of himself. He landed 5 takedowns in that fight. He's a guy who he's the previous featherweight champ over in LFA promotion, but he's just a very well-rounded fighter. He's got solid striking, he's got power on the feet, but he can mix in the grappling as well. He's not the best grappler, but he's certainly capable of landing takedowns, as we saw in that Murphy fight. And all 10 of his wins have come inside the distance. So historically, he's known as more of a finisher as well. And then on the flip side, David Onama, he's no stranger to exciting fights and finishes himself. All 10 of his career wins have come inside the distance. He's coming off that absurd fight against Nate Landwehr. It was back and forth. Onama almost finished him early. Then Landwehr took over, almost finished Onama. It went to a majority decision, but Onama ended up losing that fight. But I still think this is a good prospect, very explosive, very powerful, especially particularly early in the fight. And I think it's going to be a very sweaty round 1 for Gabriel Santos. When you see him at this big of a number, I think he has to wrestle and wrestle aggressively in this fight to even sniff covering that price tag. And I favor Onama's power on the feet. I think he's the better striker. He's now training at Factory X Muay Thai. So I think he's going to be winning the minute standing because of the damage, and Santos is pretty hittable. Now, Santos is going to have the clear edge when he can get this fight to the ground, because Onama has given up takedowns to basically everybody. He defends takedowns at under 50%, and we know that's not a great camp in terms of defending the takedown. So I'm not really expecting that to change here, but I think he needs to keep this fight on the feet. And if he does, I think he has the potential to hurt Santos here. I'm going with the dog in Onama. Onama by TKO. That's the official pick, and this is another good fight to target on DraftKings. And next up, we got the big boys slugging it out with our only heavyweight matchup on the card. Justin Tafa, a -180 favorite with Austin Lane on the comeback at +155. And Justin Tafa is a very easy fighter to break down because we know exactly what he's going to do. He's very one-dimensional. He's just a pure boxer. He's a good boxer, but that's all he has to his game. He's very powerful. All 6 of his career wins have come by knockout. He's not much of a grappler whatsoever, but he does have good takedown defense, so he forces a lot of his opponents to strike with him. Now, on the flip side, Austin Lane fought on Dana White's Contender Series. He previously fought in the NFL. He's a bigger guy, local guy, training out of Florida. He's going to have a couple inches of reach here. He's going to be taller. He's definitely the bigger fighter. But in terms of skill, I do think I got to side with Taha here. I think Lane has been able to mix in the wrestling in a couple of his previous fights. I don't really think that's going to be a path to victory for him here. Tafa is difficult to take down. I'd be surprised if Lane is the one to do it. He's yet to be taken down at the UFC, and Lane's very hittable. He's also been knocked out 3 times in his career. I think it's only a matter of time. You have a fighter like Justin Tafa who's very powerful, who's very good at getting reads on the counter. I think he's going to land a big counter shot here that's going to hurt Austin Lane and get him out. So we're going Tafa by knockout. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our co-main event as we have my girl Amanda Hebos, a -195 favorite against Macy Barber at +165. And this is a fun matchup against 2 exciting prospects. I definitely side with Amanda Hebos. She's coming off that electric win over Viviane Araujo, where it seemed like basically everybody was saying Araujo was the better grappler, Araujo was going to knock her out on the feet, and blah, blah, blah. And Amanda Hebos dominated that fight. So yes, shout out to me. I'm going to victory lap that one. In terms of this matchup, I do think this is a pretty good matchup for her, potentially even a better matchup than that last one, because Macy Barber, what we've seen from her outside of that big power and bullying people in the clinch, when you take her down, she does not have a get-up game. You can control her. You can basically do whatever you want. And Amanda Hebos is one of the better controlled grapplers in the division. She averages over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. She's got a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And we've seen time and time again, she's been able to control fighters more skilled than Macy Barber on the mat. Fighters like Caitlin Chikagian, fighters like Viviane Araujo, etc., etc. So I think Amanda Hebos is going to be the better striker at range if she can avoid getting hit by Macy Barber. I think if you like Macy Barber, just take her knockout prop, because that's going to be a much bigger number, and that's the way that she probably has to win this fight, is by hurting Amanda Hebos, who we know has been chinny in the past. I think that's basically the only way Hebos loses this fight, because I think she's going to be landing more volume with the kicks and the jab and staying on the outside. And then in terms of the grappling, I definitely favor her to be spending time in top position, and I think she could potentially submit Macy Barber if she spends enough time on the mat with her. So I like the favor here, Amanda Hebos. I didn't bet her because I think the line's gotten kind of about accurate now, but I think early prices, if you got in early, was great on Hebos. I do think she gets her hand raised. We're going Hebos by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event as Ilia Topuria comes in as a -330 favorite with Josh Emmett on the comeback at +275. And I don't have a hot take here. I'm with the rest of the world that expects Ilia Topuria to get the job done here. I just think this is a matchup where you have 2 guys, good strikers, 1 guy, good grappler, and I think that's going to be probably the biggest edge in the fight is the grappling of Topuria. I think if he's able to get Emmett down, I do think he's the better submission grappler. I'm not sure that that's even going to be the game plan, though, because his striking is just as good as Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett, though, even at near 40 years old, is still one of the hardest hitters in the division. I just personally worry about the speed difference here. I expect Topuria to be much quicker on the feet. I think he's going to beat Josh Emmett to the punch a lot of these exchanges, and we've seen Emmett take countless damage over the course of his career. He's been knocked out before in that Jeremy Stevens fight. He also just took a beating against Yair Rodriguez to the body before getting submitted in that fight. I just think Topuria has multiple ways to win here. I don't think we're going to need 5 rounds to see this one finish, and I think Topuria's probably going to knock him out. So we're going Topuria by KO. That's the official pick. And as always, fightnumbers.com will have my DraftKings player rankings broken down by salary tier. It'll have ownership projections as well. A couple other things. It's all completely free. I'll pin it in the comments. As always, best of luck this weekend, guys, and we'll see you next time.